afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast State of the Balance from the host, Imperial Dane. So how is the balance here for July 2017, or 18 actually? How has that been? Well, I mean, overall there has been some movements here and there, but for the most part a lot of things have largely stayed the same. With the Soviets, you sort of got three predominant strategies. Either go for support weapons, Maxims, all that, or they go for a lot of penal troopers, maybe a scout car, maybe a sniper, and then there's, going for a lot of conscripts. Beyond that, it's usually into a fast T-70, and then into T-34s, 76s, 85s. 85s are very popular at the moment, alongside some kind of guards dogs, and of course guardsmen. Lots of guardsmen here happening as of late, so that's a very sort of, say, common move there for the Soviets. Some are going fast too, usually the armored assault, which is still largely the more popular doctrine, though guard motors recently as well, and some do go guard rifle. I see the occasional fellow going for, say, shock rifle, but they're not quite as common. There's some that go for counterattack tactics. There's certainly some variety then, so doctrine. There's still some, overall, say, predominant, like armored assault and guard motor. So that's sort of largely what's happening over the Soviets. I mean, they've still got a lot of strategies, a lot of tactics available to them. There's a lot of openings you can sort of have to basically expect. So they certainly have a lot of ways of essentially playing the game. Though there's the Oberkommando penal troopers are very much the more common move, since penal troopers are really good versus the Oberkommando West in the early game, alongside, say, a scout car, depending on the situation. There's certainly a few things you can consider there overall. Moving on to the Americans, things have, as usual, largely the same. Infantry is reasonably popular. That's all beginning to drop down a bit there a bit. Airborne sees some usage. Heavy cavalry is reasonably popular. Of course, there's always the cheeky rogues going for mechanized company. But for the most part, it's centered around the same usual few doctrines. Lieutenants into anti-aircraft half-decks, very popular. 50 calibers, of course, really popular as well, in particular versus German infantry strategy. So if you're going for a lot of infantry, expect 50 calibers in a lot of cases. Some do commit to lieutenants, or I mean lieutenants, but the captain, the platoon command, or the company command post, stewards, and occasionally maybe a pack howitzer. But for the most part, it's lieutenant, anti-aircraft half-deck, 50 calibers, and then into the Jackson or Sherman, depending on the situation. Shermans are slightly beginning to win, ground again with some American players, though for the most part Jacksons do still to be popular, and of course Pershings alongside heavy cavalry, of course, in that sense tend to go together reasonably well as well. So overall, as such, not a lot of big changes with the Americans and their meta game. And with the Brits, I mean, it's for the most part, get a lot of infantry sections, maybe an AC depending on the situation, maybe a sniper, maybe some sappers, push out a fast Cromwell, and then depending on what you're sort of going for, you might try and push for a crocodile or something else. There are some now going to begin to go for comets again, but for the most part it's just a lot of sections, a lot of medium tanks, maybe a Firefly depending on what's being brought up there. So there's really not been a lot of changes there. Commando, Vanguard, Rolling Gear certainly caught on a bit. Then Mobile Assault is always sort of the popular doctrines there, but mostly just focused on the infantry and somehow getting flamethrowers and maybe having a crocodile in reserve. So nothing huge there. Special weapons are slightly dropped off. There's still some that go for it, but it's definitely not as popular as it used to be. So that sort of largely, I think, covers the British. Moving on to the Oberkommando West, I mean, mostly go for a lot of full scale on this, and depending on the other elements of the strategy, they might go for Lux Puma, in which case special operations usually what happens over the Command Panther. Not the most exciting strategy as such, and certainly could indicate maybe there's some slight changes there needed. But it's not, all they go for it. Some do go for looks, but they might go for like several looks to try to really just finish the game right then and there. So that's a certain subset of Oberkommando strategies. Some go for battle headquarters, some go for flak half tracks, some will go for faster square punted quarters, maybe some orbital garden. They definitely do see usage with some players, and then there's other Panzerforce or Panthers depending on the player as well, and a bit the situation. But most commonly is the Panther 4, but the Panther does happen as well. Doctrinally, a lot of spec ops, again, if they do go for Lux Puma, some go for Luftwaffe. Fallschirmjäger is certainly getting a bit more popular there as well, with a few experimenting with Overwatch as a relate. I mean, those are sort of the predominant doctrines that have been utilised. The others just not quite seeing a lot of usage as such. I mean, Feuersturm is a bit of a rarity, for example, there. So not a lot happening there as such, either with the Oberkommando West. Again, lots of Lux Puma at some point, but again, sort of as people begin to counter it, slowly drawing back into other sort of varied strategies there. Finally, the Wehrmacht, not a lot has as such changed. There was actually a drop, I think, in sort of overall Wehrmacht played a lot of Oberkommando West players in the last couple of weeks. That seems to be slightly turning back now to more Wehrmacht players again. Lightning War Jaeger infantry is more popular now. Mobile infantry used to be all the rage, but as that strategy got countered, the weaknesses appeared once more. that is, you're basically relying on Collins, which has its weaknesses. I mean, people are switching up, branching out again. So Jaeger Infantry, Lightning War, T-43s, calling it infantry. Tiger tanks more popular. Panzer IV still tend to be sort of the predominant move there from medium armor. 222s and flame for half tanks are popular. In particular, flame for half tank is popular. Sadly, Panzer Grenadiers aren't fully popular, though they do see usage with some players. They are something to, worth watching out for, though most Wehrmacht players I still feel go for just mostly a lot of Grenadiers. Tier 4 is there with some players. Sturmpanzers, Panzer 5s, and of course Panzer Werfers do see some usage. They're not, as quite as rare as they was, like say before the patch, but they're not, exactly what everybody is going for. But they're definitely a possibility you have to keep in mind, and so you need to be prepared for. Otherwise, you might get a bit punished. Just saying. So those are some things there worth keeping in mind as well. But again, predominantly Panzer IVs and Jaeger Infantry and such, depending overall on the situation and what's happening on the battlefield. So, again, overall, so that you still have to play aggressively, you still have to push for an early advantage and hold on to it, because otherwise still the Wehrmacht tends to lack a bit late game combat mechanics, despite again being the late game faction. They do feel like still lack the, mechanics and the tools to actually pull that off. So that's a bit unfortunate overall still. But as such, that's it. Really, in the terms of state of the balance, not a lot has changed since last month. A lot of this, but again, there's been some changes in the strategy for a lot of the sides, but the Surge still remain very flexible and very strong, to be honest. In many cases, if you know what you're doing, you can quickly lock down your opponent and destroy them, because they can just get off such a strong start still. So that's certainly something they're worth keeping in mind, and certainly I still feel like the Wehrmacht lacks some sort of late game element, to really get back into the game, so they have something resembling a stronger late game, because if you can shut them down the first 10 minutes, they can usually be in such a situation they can actually have a very hard time getting back into the game at all. So that's certainly something they're worth keeping in mind. But overall, I'd say, reasonably balanced. And again, there's some variety overall with all factions. So that's good, that's nice, and certainly important. So it's not all as bad as it used to be for sure. Though, of course, there's still some tricky bits. A part of me still thinks the T7 needs to be toned down. That thing is nuts and can easily swing a game around very hard. In fact, there's some players who are now beginning to commit again to double T70s. So that's certainly something else to be worried about. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed this little state of the balance. Hopefully it gives you different matches, something to look out for, something to keep in mind while you're playing against the different factions, what to look out for, what to keep in mind. If it has been helpful, great. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Of course, consider supporting by pledging on Patreon or donating via PayPal. Links in the video description. Either bit helps me out a ton. So this is Imperial Links. Cheers. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you all another time for another video. Cheers.